guys! I guess this isn't really a voice reveal unless you've come here from Wattpad, since I've posted another video with my singing voice. By the way, it's not good, so don't watch it. But I thought it'd be really fun to try one of these. I've seen people all across Wattpad doing readings of their books, and for the longest while, I've wanted to try it. I guess I really never thought of myself as having a great reading voice, but I've gained some confidence after one of my friends did one of these videos for her first chapter. The Donut Shop was actually my nano project from 2020, and I started uploading it with every chapter that I finished, but I took it down shortly after the third or fourth chapter, because I learned it's much easier to edit an unpublished book than spam people with reposting the same chapter 10 times. Anyway, without further ado, here's the first chapter. The Donut Shop. Chapter 1. D stands for Don't Close. "Hey, Ethan," Tweed called out from behind him in the hall. The bell hadn't yet rung, but Ethan was prepared to get a head start in the lab they were working on today. Their teacher was the absolute worst about turning assignments in on time, and if they didn't finish an experiment, they would either have to come to school early or stay later. Ethan hated this policy, as did all of his friends, because they always went to their favorite place in the entire world after school, Soul Bakery. The dark-haired boy turned around and waved to Tweed, who jogged over, catching up to him further down in the hall. Ethan had been told he was a fast walker, but he didn't mind his habit unless he was walking with someone. Then he usually forced himself to match their pace. The pants that gave Tweed his name swished as they walked into the chemistry classroom. Mr. Feld was already seated at his desk and was typing away furiously on his keyboard. He barely glanced up when the boys walked in, and didn't react even when they greeted him. He just grumbled a good morning, continuing his ever-present work. "Someone's grumpy this morning," Tweed whispered to Ethan, making the other boy chuckle. "We better count our lucky stars that he isn't giving us a pop quiz before the lab," Ethan said, laughing as they headed toward the table in the back. Mr. Feld had already wheeled out their cart, filled to the brim with various tools Ethan recognized were used in the chapter diagrams from the book. "Mr. Feld, are we doing a titration lab?" he questioned. The teacher snapped up as if he had awoken out of a trance, and he looked at the boys, who had slipped on their goggles and were grabbing the equipment needed for the experiment. "Oh yes, we are. Where is everyone?" He glanced up at the clock. When he saw the time, he turned back to the boys, who were enveloped in silence as they set up their beakers with the clear fluid that would soon turn blue. "You guys are early today," he observed. Tweed nodded. "Yeah, we figured we might as well get a head start today, since we're already here," he justified as they finished prepping the beakers, the BRA fixed onto the stand. Tweed had already read up on how to properly assemble the station, but Ethan hadn't gotten quite that far, being swamped with various assignments. As a junior, he expected to have his life more under control this year, and maybe handle his procrastination problem, but life seemed to have other plans for him. "Tweed, do you know how this lab goes?" Ethan whispered, and Tweed nodded, his sun-colored hair bobbing with his head. "Yeah, I did the homework last night for the next chapter." "By the way, where were you? We missed you at the bakery," he said, his goofy expression making Ethan chuckle as they filled the beakers with the salt solution. When Ethan glanced at the lab sheet Mr. Feld had left on the table, he almost groaned out loud, but refrained, instead choosing to share a look with Tweed. Tweed was, by far, the smartest kid in their class. He understood concepts without even having to read them twice, and he could solve calculus problems in his head. However, even he wasn't immune to the stress of the huge workload teachers tended to lay on their students. Tweed flipped the paper over and gave Ethan a funny look, who turned over the page as well. Oh God, there was a second part of the lab. It was like Mr. Feld had taken 2 separate lab days and combined them into one short span of 50 minutes. "How the hell does he expect us to finish this?" Ethan leaned over the table, asking his partner with ridicule edging into his tone. Tweed just shook his head, dumbfounded. "I guess we've suddenly turned into Sonic after a Monday off," he remarked. He paused, and his eyes glimmered with the beginnings of an idea. "Why don't I do the first part, and you do the second part, and we'll share our data," he suggested, and Ethan broke into a large grin. "This is why you're ranked first," he said, still smiling. Tweed winked at him through his stylish cat-eye glasses. I know you love me. You can just go ahead and say it, he said, raising his arms in a mock blessing. Ethan rolled his eyes. Okay, I take it back, he teased, sticking out his tongue as he got to work on separating the salt in a soluble solution. 20 minutes and an evacuation of the lab due to Ethan boiling the solution later. All of the students in their AP Chem class were packed into the narrow hall outside like a can of sardines. Ella turned to Ethan and glared at him. Way to go, pea-brain, she spat out, receiving a glare from Mr. Feld as he ushered the last student out to wait for the fume hood to suck all of the carbon dioxide out. Not a positive comment, Ella, he warned, and she hung her head, but she wasn't really sorry. Ethan could see the glint of mischief in her eyes. Sorry, Mr. Feld, she mocked, then turned to jeer at Ethan. He just ignored her and turned to Tweed, who was on TikTok. It's a wonder how you keep up such good grades and still have a social life, Ethan commented, but Tweed just grunted, scrolling through memes. The dark-haired boy sighed and pressed his back against the wall, its coolness seeping through the hoodie he had bought from a trip to the Space Museum a few years back. As he stood relaxing, he noticed Mr. Feld went back inside the room and returned with his mini projector and a writing tablet. Cue the entire class wanting to kill themselves. Alright guys, so I brought the lesson out here since we can no longer have class in there, he announced, and Ethan nearly melted into a puddle right then and there. Read the room, Mr. Feld. No one wants this except you, he thought to himself, pulling his hoodie up so it covered his mouth. Everyone, please sit down so we can start, Mr. Feld ordered, and all of the students shuffled to find a place on the ground. As Ethan looked around at their disinterested faces, he noticed that Tweed had disappeared. He scanned the crowd again, but his eyes fell short of one particular boy. Mr. Feld, may I use the restroom? He asked the teacher. Mr. Feld sighed. On any other day, he would have gone to hell and back before he said yes. But today, he was quite annoyed with Ethan, so he permitted him to leave. Sending a silent thank you above, he got up and fast-walked down the main hall, peering down every hall with classrooms in them to search for Tweed. He was nowhere to be found. Finally, after a few minutes of aimlessly meandering the halls, he spotted Tweed in front of his locker with his bag slung over his shoulder, rifling through his books. Tweed, what are you doing? Ethan asked, jogging over to his friend, who looked up at him like a deer in headlights. Going home. What about you? He asked nonchalantly. Tweed was infamous among the teachers for completely dominating every lesson. At least once every school year, a teacher tried Tweed's patience by calling him out in the middle of class when they thought he wasn't paying attention. He had a short temper and social anxiety, so he tended to hate being picked on. Every year, one teacher would try him, and every year, he would get up and walk out of their class. They could try as hard as they would to give him detention or any other punishment, but he always managed to evade it because he was the top student. The principal didn't heed him much, because he had better, more important things to worry about than his top student walking out of their class. I thought you already walked out of a teacher's class this year, Ethan questioned, and Tweed closed his locker, shooting him a look. Well, another one of these people tried me, so I'm leaving, he declared, flashing up a peace sign. Ethan followed him, his higher-pitched voice rumbly as he chuckled, listening to his friend's rant. I mean, y'all really gonna think I'm gonna stay for a 30-minute lesson that he could have taught in, 5 minutes? That's straight cap, and I'm going home, he proclaimed with a headshake and an eye roll. Ethan burst out laughing. So inspirational, he applauded with a laugh and a golf clap, and Tweed looked back at him, grinning. So, where are we going? He asked, adjusting the straps of his bag that he had somehow managed to smuggle under the hawk eye of Mr. Feld. One would think that such an astute teacher would question a kid taking his backpack with him to the bathroom. One would be very wrong. Where else? Soul Bakery, of course, Tweed exclaimed. Ethan clapped his friend on the back. Lead the way, good sir. Once they arrived on the street to Soul Bakery, Tweed parked in front of his grandparents' bodega, and they started their trek to the bakery, belting out the lyrics to the song they had created just for it. However, when they reached the front entrance, the duo stopped dead in their tracks, as if their feet had turned into goop. Is that... Tweed trailed off, pointing at the sign hanging in front of the storefront. In thick, red, bold letters, it read, Closed. It can't be, Ethan whispered as he stepped closer to the door. Soul Bakery's closing. Alright, guys, well, that's all I have for you for the first chapter, so I hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, just give this video a like, I guess, and comment down below if you want me to continue this, or if you want me to start doing these for all of my books. Alright, love you guys, peace!